So wait, y'all are fans of dogs who look like they have boobs where their joints should be? We opened this week right in the middle of the action. Yeah, this show didn't waste any time to not only get to the fisticuffs, but to also kinda differentiate from its competition that we'll get a little more into later. Anyway, it was an okay battle with some wonky animation here and there, but at least they went with the best insert song of this whole series, i.e. Minamo's Innocent Call. And really, the main takeaway of all of this was just to show how the princes were improving against their adversaries, including the knights and the bishops, who had previously given them so much trouble that they had to break out the song fragments. But now, as told through some rather clever visual storytelling, the princesses had recognized their attack patterns like a boss fight from an action game, and knew how to navigate around them and when to strike. I like this as it does show how both sides are adjusting to the other's tactics. I mean, sure, the superheroes will have to win out in the end, but it does feel more like a battle of attrition rather than a one-sided beatdown like it has been with the current Precure season, and has been my biggest criticism of that show. Well, here's hoping that y'all's merch sell well at least. But yeah, while the princesses had gotten used to their newest pieces, the villains were still working on new monster types. I mean, yeah, there's only like 3 pieces left. One that's not any stronger than a pawn, one that's kind of OP, and the third one, which is, yeah, gonna be what we see this week, of course. Later, Minamo is actually gonna follow up on her little promise from the last episode and make some sweets for her friends. And, interestingly enough, the show gave a legit step-by-step recipe for what she called snowball cookies, including all of the ingredients and everything. And it seemed fairly simple and easy to make as they were baked in the microwave, but still turned out a tasty looking product that maybe someone should try and make like a whole video or even a short out of. We'll see. In any case, they still need to get the final okay from an actual expert. Oh, look who's finally back after cheating on her husband. But yeah, it's actually kind of impressive how this VA could pull off 2 very different voices for 2 very different magical girl anime in the same weekend. One was for a dense fairy who didn't even realize she had a stalker fan, and the other was for a mother with some very skinny arms and a good sense of taste. Calling right now, this is somehow going to apply to the princesses and how they'll deal with an upcoming enemy of some sort. That plus this bit where Mrs. Sorno apologized to her daughter for leaving her to take care of herself and her little brother. And yeah, there was just a lot you could read into this scene, as while Minamo said that she would be okay with handling everything while her parents weren't home half the time, she also paused for a significant amount of time before she said that, and looked clearly troubled. In turn, Miss Sorno's expressions gave me a sense that she wasn't totally buying what her daughter was saying, but she had no real choice other than to encourage her daughter's resolve. And yeah, I'll say right now, this is probably my favorite part of this episode, as there's just so much going on that didn't revolve around just fantasy and the magical girl stuff. Anyway, after a cute exchange between Minamo and Nachi where the latter was also likely picking up on how hard her friend was working to take care of herself and her brother, the former gave her some of her cookies, which include some brown ones. So did she coat them in cocoa powder, or did she burn them? I don't know, but the latter is just a little funnier to me. We also learned that Nachi was a part of the broadcast club at their school, which she wasn't too excited for, which Minamo correctly pointed out how she shouldn't complain about a club that she picked out for herself. Though it did give us a nice moment where the kind water princess could be a little more satirical with her friend. I know a lot of these scenes come off a little inconsequential, and they kind of are, but at the same time, I do like how they're building up the characters with this stuff. Later, Minamo and Kagari stopped by their Kohai's home to have their first full-on team meeting. There, they also met Nagase's cats, who, let me guess, they're gonna become the 6 Rangers of the season. I mean, the Precure are gonna do that with their mascots. And since they established that Alispians can't cross dimensions, Navier had to communicate through Skype. Oh wait, that's not a thing anymore. Well, anyway, he was just disappointed that he couldn't partake in Minamo's cookies. You're gonna bring some of that delicious fried chicken? Actually, these are cookies and okay, screw you guys, I don't need any of that junk.
Also, Kagari just stole this scene with how much she was enjoying partaking in her first treat from a friend. It was both adorable, and yet also kind of sad when you start to realize how much of an overly conservative life this girl has lived if she probably had never even had homemade Western cookies like these. Anyway, the cookies ended up bringing up the topic of Minamo's parents, as they remembered how Minamo had supposedly gotten her cooking skills from her mother, who was a home ec teacher. However, that also brought up the question of what her dad did.
No, please don't tell me he's a guy in a really obnoxious looking mask who spouts on and on about some pointless wrestling facts.
Actually, they already very cleverly revealed that he was a boy newscaster, with him appearing on their television after the scene with Minamo's mother. He even ironically wished the viewers a nice day just as his kids were leaving his house.
I will be eternally disappointed with the internet if this doesn't become a meme.
Seriously, Kagari might not have been technically the main character of this episode, as it was definitely more Minamo's story, but she was just amazing here in showing off all of her social awkwardness. Eventually though, the fun times had to come to an end as the villains launched another attack. And I'm not gonna lie, I kinda made the same face as Nagase, as all of this character building and comedy has been great so far. Regardless, the girls went into action, and again, while nothing amazing or anything, they did effectively show how the princesses figured out the knight and bishop's attack patterns, with Kagari even counting down when to move so that she could get some of that sweet witch time from Bayonetta. During all this, Best briefly got involved and again showed off how these villains weren't to be taken lightly. He also finally introduced himself to them, as well as revealed their group's name, the Band Snatch.
I've heard worse similar band names.
And of course, he then summoned their next chess piece, which was the Rook. Like the bishop, it had long-range attacks to reflect its ability to move across the board, albeit not quite as much as it could only go along the cardinal directions. Thus, Nagase tried to finish it off before he could deal some serious damage.
Y'all know what you're doing.
However, since the piece was also shaped like a tower, it had strong defenses, or more specifically, a freaking AT field. Like, seriously, you can't tell me that's not what that is. Fortunately, the princesses just chained all of their finishes together to essentially make a makeshift group finisher. And since AT fields are only as strong as the plot allows them to be, they managed to break through it. With that, the episode ended with the princes having won the day, but as usual, Best walked away with more data that he was likely going to use to create his ultimate chess piece.
This was a really solid episode, mostly for the slice of life stuff.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the action was good enough, and it was interesting to see both the heroines and villains adjusting their strategies, but the character building here was just great.
If anything, this really does feel like the calm before the storm, as things might start to really go south for these characters now that we've got to know them better.
I gotta really praise the show for how they handle its visual storytelling. When used properly, it can really get across the emotions better than any spoken words could ever, which yeah, is kind of the point of visual storytelling. Still, they really managed to get across the awkwardness of Minamo's talk with her mother, and how stressful it would be to maintain a household as a growing teen while her parents were almost constantly busy at work. It gets across Minamo's selflessness, and maybe even set up things for an inevitable crash out under all of the stress. Meanwhile, her interactions with the other princesses were fun, especially Kagari. Yeah, surprisingly, the energetic little gremlin Nagase felt secondary to her this week, which was a fun way of playing with the dynamics of this team. Speaking of which, the fights this week, while nothing technically amazing, did also have some solid storytelling to them, with how our heroines were adjusting to their enemy, who thankfully are also getting more development. It's clearly building up to a big battle for this first core of the series, which I'm really looking forward to, seeing as how we've gotten a good sense of what these characters are all like. And overall, this is just another solid episode with some great character work. Minamo might have a lot on her plate at home, but she also clearly has a lot in her heart, which hopefully won't be broken too badly once things start hitting the fan.
Thank you for watching, and if you want to see us keep cooking on this channel, well, maybe you should check out some of our other videos.
We've got a lot going on this channel, with a little magic, idols, tokusatsu, and maybe some cooking if we can find some almond flour first.
Look forward to Comrade Gav tomorrow. Until then, though, for now, my friends, and if you excuse me, I'm gonna see how many different limit breaks I could do with this thing.